Well, as you know, every November 11th, every Remembrance Day, I read the same poem by Rudyard Kipling. It's called Tommy Atkins. I think so many of Kipling's works are applicable. If you attended or watched our Zoom civil rights town hall with Glenn Beck, you'll see he quoted one of Kipling's wonderful poems called The Gods of the Copybook Headings. The poems were over 100 years ago, most of them in the late 19th century, many of them set in India. They were about military matters and empire matters, but you could see within them some of the same germs of the crisis that we face today. Crisis of national self-doubt, of national self-hatred, of forgetting what's right and what's wrong. Little did he know the horrors that would to come in the 20th century. I'll read that poem, Tommy Atkins, later because it always makes me choke up. There's that one line in there about Tommy Atkins and Atkins that he sees the way he's treated and he knows, you'll know the one. But what's different this year, and even more than last year, I mean, the pandemic was upon us a year ago and masks were everywhere and lockdowns were here, but the viciousness had yet to come. The brutal prosecution of the Christian churches, the imprisonment of pastors, had yet to come. Even though the cases spiked in Canada, the deaths spiked in April of 2020, you would think things would have been over by the fall, but no, they were just pausing before the brutal state truly exercised itself. And that was followed shortly thereafter in early 2021 with the vaccines and the forced vaccines. And I say forced vaccines because it's no choice to say you can have this vaccine, you can choose to have it, or you'll lose your job, be demonized, marginalized from public life. That's not any more of a real choice than the choice that your stereotypical mugger says, your money or your life. Hey, that's a choice. You just chose your life. No. So I think that what we face today is truly the gravest violation of our civil liberties in Canada's history. And I say that because normally on Remembrance Day, we stop to remember and to praise those who paid the ultimate sacrifice and those who also were wounded and those who served and survived, who did so for our liberties. But then we go back to enjoying those liberties. We have to make 2 minutes a year to remember that the lovely life we have was paid for in blood. We have to stop enjoying freedom for a moment to think about freedom. That's normally what Remembrance Day is like. This year that applies, but it also applies in a different way. We have to remember what those freedoms were that they fought for because those are going away. Maybe it's because we forgot the price we paid for the freedom, because we forgot about the veterans and those who perished, that we have forgotten who they were, we've forgotten the sacrifice, and we've forgotten what they gave us because we are giving it all away. Could you have imagined 2 years ago telling people that Canadians would be locked in their own home, that they would be fired from jobs despite exemplary service, that they would be denied the right to fly in a plane or go on a train, to meet in public, to meet in private? In Alberta, if you're unvaxxed, you are not allowed to meet with other unvaxxed people for Christmas, for example. That truly is what our veterans and those who fell paid the price to fight against. We're not just here to remember the veterans. We're here to remember what the veterans fought for. I'm afraid we've forgotten that part too. These are the worst of times. We'll do our best to chronicle it, to shine a light of public scrutiny on it, to tell the other side of the story, and through the Democracy Fund to fight for these people. That's my monologue for today, but now let me end as I always do by reading Tommy Atkins by Rudyard Kipling. I went into a public house to get a pint of beer. The publican he up and says, "We serve no redcoats here." The girls behind the bar, they laughed and giggled fit to die. I outs into the street again, and to myself says I, "Oh, it's Tommy this and Tommy that, and Tommy go away." But it's, "Thank you, Mr. Atkins," when the band begins to play. The band begins to play, my boys, the band begins to play. Oh, it's, "Thank you, Mr. Atkins," when the band begins to play. I went into a theater as sober as could be. They gave a drunk civilian room, but hadn't none for me. They sent me to the gallery or around the music halls, But when it comes to fighting, Lord, they'll shove me in the stalls. For it's Tommy this and Tommy that and Tommy wait outside. But it's special train for Atkins when the trooper's on the tide. The troop ship's on the tide, my boys. The troop ship's on the tide. Oh, it's special train for Atkins when the trooper's on the tide. Yes, making mock of uniforms that guard you while you sleep is cheaper than those uniforms, and they're starvation cheap. And hustling drunken soldiers when they're going large a bit is 5 times better business than parading in full kit. Then it's Tommy this and Tommy that and Tommy, how's your soul? But it's thin red line of heroes when the drums begin to roll. The drums begin to roll, my boys, the drums begin to roll. Oh, it's thin red line of heroes when the drums begin to roll. We aren't no thin red heroes, nor we aren't no blackguards too, but single men in barracks, most remarkable like you. And if sometimes our conduct isn't all your fancy paints, well, single men in barracks don't grow into plaster saints. Well, it's Tommy this and Tommy that and Tommy fall behind, but it's pleased to walk in front, sir, when there's trouble in the wind. There's trouble in the wind, my boys, there's trouble in the wind. Oh, it's pleased to walk in front, sir, when there's trouble in the wind. You talk of better food for us and schools and fires and all. We'll wait for extra rations if you treat us rational. Don't mess about the cook room slops, but prove it to our face. The widow's uniform is not the soldier man's disgrace. For it's Tommy this and Tommy that and chuck him out, the brute. But it's savior of his country when the guns begin to shoot. And it's Tommy this and Tommy that and anything you please. And Tommy ain't a bloomin' fool. You bet that Tommy sees. That's Tommy Atkins by Rudyard Kipling. That last line just gets me every time. We do forget our veterans and the fallen. We absolutely do. Don't deny it. But worse, we forgot what they fell for, what they died for, what they fought for. And I think that is something that they would never forgive us for.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.